There are teachings that were never meant for crowded rooms, not because they were weak, but because they were too intimate to survive the machinery of power. Some truths can be preached from a pulpit, organized into doctrine, turned into ritual, and handed to the masses without changing anything. But some truths are different. Some truths do not merely comfort you, they rearrange you. They return you to something the world has worked very hard to make you forget. And if you found this tonight, if something in you went still the moment these words began, then listen carefully, because this is not just another explanation of ancient scripture. This is about a hidden strand inside early mystical Christianity, a strand preserved in esoteric texts, where light was not only a symbol of goodness, not only a poetic metaphor for virtue, but a living reality surrounding and permeating the human being. In the text that inspired this meditation, Jesus is not speaking to the crowd. He is speaking to the inner circle, to those close enough to hear what cannot be shouted. And there he describes a reality that overturns the way most people have been taught to think about spiritual life. He speaks of glory, of radiance, of garments of light, of a form that is not reducible to flesh. And the implication is staggering. What if the deepest spiritual life was never about becoming acceptable to an external authority, but about remembering what already lives within and around you? What if the thing you have called exile, disconnection, homesickness, the strange sense that your life is happening inside a surface world that never fully touches the deepest part of you, is not pathology at all? What if it is memory? What if there is, hidden beneath the noise of your routines, your anxieties, your deadlines, your roles, and your survival scripts, a second order of being waiting for recognition? That is the mystery. Not the fantasy that you will become something other than human, but the recognition that human life may be layered, that flesh is not the whole story, that consciousness may carry a forgotten brightness the ordinary mind cannot easily hold. And before I take you deeper, you need to understand why teachings like this have always carried the atmosphere of secrecy. It is not only because institutions suppress what they cannot control, it is also because language itself begins to fail at the threshold. The moment you try to speak clearly about interior radiance, divine memory, the felt sense of being more than the identity history handed you, the words become too small. So the ancients spoke in symbols. They spoke of robes of glory, luminous bodies, hidden names, ascent, return, the bridal chamber, the spark, the kingdom within. Not because they were confused, but because symbol is what remains when truth exceeds plain speech. And that is why the secret, if there is one, is never really hidden by distance. It is hidden by distraction. It is hidden by literalism. It is hidden by the habit of hearing sacred language and immediately flattening it into either dogma or superstition. The deeper tradition does neither. It listens for resonance. It asks a more dangerous question. What in me recognizes this before I fully understand it? Because that is how remembrance begins, not with argument, with recognition. And this is where the source text becomes so powerful. It does not present the spiritual life as mere belief management. It presents it as transformation of perception, a change in what you identify with, a shift in where you think your life is actually happening. Most people have been trained to live in total identification with the visible layer. The body gets treated as the whole self. Thought gets treated as identity. Emotion gets treated as truth. Social reality gets treated as ultimate reality. And as long as that compression remains complete, the human being stays easy to govern, easy to frighten, easy to define, easy to exhaust. But the mystical stream says there is another possibility. You can live in the world without being sealed inside its lowest interpretation. You can inhabit form without mistaking form for the entirety of your nature. You can move through the visible while developing fidelity to the invisible. That is the threshold, That is the beginning of the return, not an escape from life, but a reordering of attention. Not denial of the body, but refusal to reduce yourself to it. And what makes this theme so enduring is that nearly everyone has touched it for a second, even if they had no language for it. A moment late at night when the room felt charged, a silence that seemed deeper than ordinary silence. A strange stillness around the chest, the brow, the crown, as if your own interior space had become larger than your circumstances, a dream that felt more like memory than imagination. A sudden certainty that the roles you perform all day are not false exactly, but incomplete. A fleeting impression that something in you has remained untouched by the years, untouched by humiliation, untouched by the endless negotiations required to survive in this world. The mystical Christian imagination would say that these moments matter, not because they prove a theory in some simplistic way, but because they hint that human awareness is not closed. They hint that the self you defend all day may not be your deepest center. They hint that remembrance is possible. And here is where the symbol of light becomes so precise. Light does not force. Light reveals. Light does not argue with darkness. It makes darkness visible by exceeding it. Light does not need permission from the room it enters. It simply changes the conditions of perception. This is why so many ancient teachings return to it. Light names what is present before confusion, during confusion, and after confusion. Light names the element of consciousness that can witness without collapsing, that can know without possessing, that can endure without becoming cold. So, when esoteric texts speak of a body of light, one way to hear it is this: there is a mode of being in you that is more spacious than fear, more enduring than role, more truthful than social identity, and more native to the sacred than the personality usually remembers. The tragedy is not that it is absent. The tragedy is that it is forgotten, and the source text presses this point with unusual force. It suggests that the path is not acquisition but activation, not manufacturing holiness from scratch but consenting to a reality already near. That reverses almost everything the anxious mind expects. The anxious mind always wants complexity. It wants ladders, rankings, badges, secret qualifications, years of proving, systems of scarcity. But the holiest teachings are often disarmingly simple. Simple does not mean shallow. It means undivided. It means direct. It means the thing works at the level beneath argument. Breath is simple. Silence is simple. Attention is simple. A sentence spoken with full presence is simple, yet any of those, approached rightly, can become a doorway. The problem is that modern people are so overstimulated that simplicity feels insulting until it begins to work. They want the key to look expensive, but the ancient way is subtler. The real key often looks almost too small because its power comes not from spectacle but from alignment. A true word, spoken at the right depth, reorganizes more than 1,000 thoughts spoken from the surface. A breath taken with full awareness changes more than 10 hours of distracted self-improvement. A single act of inward recognition, if it is real, can begin a return the personality has postponed for decades. So, do not confuse simplicity with weakness. The deepest spiritual technologies survive precisely because they can pass through history concealed inside very little. A phrase, a breath, a pause, a gesture of attention. That is how fire travels when the world grows hostile to flame, and now we move closer to the center. If the hidden current within these teachings can be summarized at all, it may be something like this: what you seek is not elsewhere. What you seek is what in you can still recognize the light when it appears. Not the social self, not the frightened self, not the image you manage, the deeper witness, the interior capacity for recognition. That is why some people can hear these themes and feel nothing, while others feel as if an old seal has been touched. It is not superiority, it is resonance. Some language lands because something in the listener has been waiting for it a long time. Maybe all spiritual history is, in part, the story of that waiting. The waiting of the spark for the word that sounds like home, the waiting of the buried self for the sentence that does not flatter it, does not entertain it, but names it. And if you have stayed with me this far, you may already understand the real shape of the mystery. The point is not to become fascinated with hidden texts as collectibles. The point is to let them expose the forgotten architecture of your own interior life. A sacred text becomes alive only when it stops being merely historical and starts becoming diagnostic, when it reads you back. When it tells you why ordinary life can look so full and still feel insufficient. When it shows you that your deepest ache may not be failure, but misidentification. When it reveals that so much exhaustion comes from trying to live entirely from the layer that was never meant to carry the whole burden of your being. And this brings us to the practice, not a magical guarantee, not a mechanical hack, a contemplative rite of remembrance drawn from the symbolic world of the source text. You can do it tonight, and you should do it quietly, without performance, without the need to prove anything to anyone, because sacred things deepen in secrecy before they shine in public. Sit or lie down before sleep. Put away every device. Let the room become simple. Do not rush. Let the day loosen its grip. Then close your eyes and feel the physical fact of yourself first. The weight of the body, the contact with the chair, the bed, the floor, the ordinary reality of breath entering and leaving. Stay there for a moment, because the path is not built on rejecting the body. It is built on bringing presence into it. Then, when you are steady, imagine a field of living radiance above and around you. Do not force an image. Let it be sensed if it cannot yet be seen. Let it be more like presence than fantasy. And as you inhale slowly, think or whisper, "Light is nearer than thought." As you exhale, think or whisper, "I remember what the world cannot name." Do that 7 times, gently, without strain. Inhale, "Light is nearer than thought." Exhale, "I remember what the world cannot name." Do not chase an experience. Let the words work beneath the surface. Then, rest in silence. And after that silence, speak this slowly, aloud if you can. "I am more than what was wounded. I am more than what was named. I belong to the living light." Say it 3 times, not as a performance, but as recognition. "I am more than what was wounded. I am more than what was named. I belong to the living light." Again, "I am more than what was wounded. I am more than what was named. I belong to the living light." One more time. "I am more than what was wounded. I am more than what was named. I belong to the living light." Then be still. That stillness matters, because the point is not the sentence by itself. The point is the quality of presence in which the sentence is received. Ancient words are not passwords, they are tuning forks. If you say them from the surface only, they remain interesting language. If you say them from depth, they become a signal. They begin to gather the scattered parts of attention. They begin to pull identity away from fear's smaller story. They begin to open the interior room where recognition happens. And if something happens afterward, do not be too quick to label it. You may feel warmth in the chest, pressure around the brow, a subtle sensation around the skin, as if the air immediately around you has become denser or softer or more alive. You may feel a hush in the room that seems disproportionate to ordinary quiet. You may feel a gentle current at the crown, a loosening in the sternum, a descending calm that is not the same as sleepiness. You may feel very little at first except unusual stillness, and that too matters. The sacred often enters without spectacle. Later that night, the dream world may become brighter, more coherent, more symbolic. In the next day or two, You may notice an unusual sensitivity to certain places, certain people, certain words. You may feel less hypnotized by things that normally hook you. You may find that some old emotional pattern tries to rise and cannot fully take hold. You may experience a strange, almost tender detachment from the frantic social theater that usually feels so total. Or you may simply carry a subtle but persistent sense that something in you has become easier to access, as though a door did not swing open dramatically but quietly remained unlocked. All of this belongs on the same spectrum. The language of mysticism has always known that transformation arrives by degrees, sometimes as ignition, sometimes as warming, sometimes as recollection, sometimes as a long return that begins with one unmistakable shift in the atmosphere of the self. That is why patience matters. Not the patience of postponement, but the patience of listening. If nothing theatrical happens, that does not mean nothing happened. If much happens, you do not need to exaggerate it. The deeper thing is fidelity. Return to the practice again tomorrow night, and the next. Let the rhythm itself become part of the rite. Not because repetition earns love from the divine, but because repetition clears static from the instrument. Every night you choose presence over noise, interiority over distraction, remembrance over mechanical living. You strengthen the path by walking it. And here is why night matters. Night is when the social self weakens. Night is when the world loosens its naming power. Night is when the boundary between deliberate thought and deeper strata of consciousness becomes more permeable. The ancients understood thresholds: dusk, midnight, the moments before sleep, the hour when the room is plain and the soul is easier to hear. If you are going to test whether this language is merely beautiful or actually alive for you, test it there. Not in the middle of your notifications, not in the hard glare of performance. In the hush before sleep, when the argument in you is tired and the deeper ear can finally come forward. Do it tonight while the resonance is fresh, while the words are still warm in your mind, while some part of you is still quietly asking whether this message found you for a reason. Because even if you do not believe in destiny in the simplistic sense, you know the feeling of a message arriving at the exact moment your interior life had become ready to hear it. You know what it is to encounter a sentence that feels less like information and more like recognition. Honor that, not superstitiously, reverently. The modern world teaches you to dismiss too quickly what it cannot monetize or measure. But your life has likely already shown you that the most important things often announce themselves by resonance first and explanation later. So take this seriously enough to test, lightly enough to remain honest, and deeply enough to let the practice become real. And if, after you do it, something in you shifts, however gently, mark it. Not to impress anyone, to witness it. Write down what happened, the dream, the silence, the bodily sensation, the unusual peace, the symbolic image, the strange relief, the sense that the world looked slightly different the next morning. Record it, because memory fades quickly when the day resumes its pressure. Sacred moments deserve a container. And if this meditation meets you in a real way, if you recognize yourself in it, if you practice it tonight and feel that unmistakable click of inner recognition, then leave a simple word beneath this video. A. Remembered. Not as proof, not as performance, as witness, as a quiet signal to others who know the feeling of finding language for something they have carried alone. Some teachings do not need to be debated. They need to be recognized. Some doors do not need to be forced. They need to be approached with the right kind of silence. And some truths do not enter because you mastered them. They enter because at last you became still enough to receive them. So tonight, before sleep, return to the breath, return to the sentence, return to the light beneath the name you were given by the world. Let the room grow quiet. Let the day fall away. Let the deeper self step forward. Then speak the words with presence, not haste. I am more than what was wounded. I am more than what was named. I belong to the living light. Hold the silence after, and listen. The door does not have to be broken down. It only has to be recognized. Tonight, that is enough.